That morning, I had no reason to leave the house. The clock on the kitchen wall ticked with its familiar rhythm. The coffee pot gurgled as it brewed my morning blend, and the newspaper sat unopened on the oak table, its headlines blurred by the early light. I'm Marjorie Hail, 69 years old, a widow for nearly 7 years, since my beloved Robert passed away in the winter of 2018. This small white house in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, is more than bricks and mortar. It's a repository of our shared memories. The rose bushes along the porch were our labor of love, planted with calloused hands and hopeful hearts. My days are simple now. I brew coffee, tend to my small collection of cacti on the windowsill, and take leisurely strolls through the neighborhood, greeting familiar faces. I never imagined that on this ordinary Tuesday, I'd witness a betrayal that would unravel my world. But that morning, a vague hunch, a restless nudge I couldn't ignore, pushed me to grab my keys, slip on my grey cardigan, and drive my old Subaru to the bank on Maple Street. The bank felt like a second home. The receptionist offered her usual friendly smile. The light wood of the reception desk gleamed, and a framed photo on the wall read, "Serving our community since 1974. Everything seemed normal until I saw her. My daughter-in-law, Brianna, stood about 20 feet away, poised in an elegant cream suit, her blonde hair pinned up in a perfect bun, her makeup flawless enough to erase any trace of fatigue. She held a thick stack of medical papers, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the lobby as she spoke to Mr. Jenkins, the branch manager I've known since he was a young teller. I used to send him Christmas cards every year. Her words froze me in place. She's no longer mentally competent. The doctor has confirmed it. My breath caught. Dr. Whitmore. I've never seen or heard of any doctor by that name. A cold, hard truth slammed into my chest like a physical blow. Brianna was plotting to take everything Robert and I had built, over 40 years of sweat and sacrifice, and my son, Daniel, the one who held me as I wept over Robert's casket, the one who promised I'd never be alone, was complicit in this silent conspiracy. I straightened my posture, clutching my worn leather purse for support, and took a deliberate step forward. "I came to check my own accounts," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, despite the storm within. "And you? It seems you're doing that for me." Brianna whipped around, her face draining of color for a split second, before she forced a fragile, unnatural smile. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Her voice caught, stiff and strained, as if she were choking on her own words. I held her gaze, my heart pounding, but my expression composed. "I came to ensure my savings are intact. You seem to have other plans." Mr. Jenkins, his brow furrowed with unease, glanced between us, clearly caught off guard. I extended my hand, my tone firm. "The documents, please." Sensing the tension, he handed them over. I flipped through the pages quickly, my experienced eyes catching the flaw in seconds. The signature was a crude forgery, the strokes tentative and mismatched. Nothing like the deliberate pull I've used my entire life. My pulse jumped. I looked Brianna dead in the eye. "You forged my signature." Her lips quivered, and she forced a laugh, desperate. "No, Mom. Maybe a teller made a mistake." I cut her off, my voice dropping to a cold edge. "Don't call me Mom. Someone trying to bury me alive while I'm still breathing doesn't earn that right." The lobby fell into a stunned silence. The young receptionist behind the counter froze, her pen hovering mid-air. Mr. Jenkins cleared his throat, his tone stern. "Mrs. Hale, I think we should pause this process and verify everything." I nodded, never breaking eye contact with Brianna. She swallowed hard, stepping back, her confidence peeling away like wet paint. Leaning in close, I whispered, "You just signed your own sentence, Brianna." Turning to Mr. Jenkins, I added, "Please freeze every account tied to my name and anyone else. I'll provide proper identification today." He nodded immediately and signaled a staffer. As Brianna mumbled incoherently and rushed out, the glass door closing behind her, I stood tall. My body shook, not from fear, but from a cold, steady anger that felt almost like calm. I knew everything had changed. I walked out with the file in hand, the sunlight flashing off my car's hood, squinting as I sat behind the wheel. My heart still hammered, but I'd secured the first weapon in a battle they didn't realize had begun. The drive home felt longer than usual, the cold air through the cracked window, carrying the pine scent of the old neighborhood. In the rearview mirror, I saw my face, tired but not weak. A woman who'd lost a husband and lived with loneliness can endure much, but she will not be declared incompetent to be robbed. That morning was only the beginning. If Brianna thought I'd sit quietly while they erased me, she was about to learn the most expensive lesson of her life. If you're still with me, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment marks this journey. Hit like if this story touches you. Let's spread it far. Brianna entered our lives like a burst of spring after a long winter. It was the summer of 2005, when Daniel, my only son, brought her home. He was 25, fresh from his accounting job, his face alight with hope. "Mom, this is the person I want to spend my life with," he said, his hand clasped in hers. I saw my younger self in her, quick, lively, full of spark. Her blonde curls framed a bright smile, and her confidence shone through. We held their wedding 2 years later in our backyard, where Robert and I had planted lavender and climbing roses along the white fence. The air was thick with the scent of blooms, and Brianna glowed in a simple lace dress, the Sunday sunlight catching the fabric. I leaned over to my best friend, Margaret, whispering, "I feel lucky. Daniel found a daughter-in-law who's educated and well-mannered." Back then, everyone adored her. She was polite at family gatherings, attentive to elders, socially smooth. Relatives murmured, "Your daughter-in-law is a gem." I felt proud, even blessed, to welcome her into our family. After Robert's death, the house transformed into a cavern of silence. The laughter that once echoed through the halls, the sound of doors opening, the morning greetings, all vanished with his last breath. He passed in his sleep, a quiet exit after a heart attack, leaving me to navigate a world that felt frighteningly empty. Daniel visited often in those early weeks, his presence a fragile comfort. But it was Brianna who stepped forward with a suggestion that caught me off guard. One evening, as we sat with tea, she said softly, "Mom, why don't we move in with you? The house is big, and I can take better care of you." I was surprised, touched by the offer. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice hesitant. "I don't want to be a burden." She smiled, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. "Not at all, Mom. We want to be close." I believed her, as mothers do when they cling to the good in their children. So, they moved in that spring, bringing boxes of clothes and hopes into our shared space. At first, it was pleasant. Brianna woke early, the clink of dishes signaling breakfast. She'd ask, "Tea or coffee, Mom?" in a sweet, sincere tone that made it hard not to respond. Evenings, the three of us ate together, talking about Daniel's work at the firm, neighborhood gossip, and memories of Robert. Sometimes I'd catch Daniel's smile and think, "You can rest now, Robert." Brianna even encouraged me to get out more. She signed me up for a senior yoga class nearby and bought me a new teal sweater, its softness a small joy. One fall evening on the porch, I told stories of the old days, when Robert and I started our tiny accounting office downtown, my hands ink-stained as he brewed coffee. Daniel leaned on Brianna's shoulder, smiling, the warm porch light casting a golden glow over us. I thought I'd found home again. Then, like all things too good to be true, the changes crept in, subtle at first. One night in 2019, I reached for the electric bill, but Brianna intercepted. "Let me handle it, Mom. I'm used to these websites. No risk of typing something wrong." Her tone was reasonable, and I nodded. A few weeks later, she said, "Let me reorganize your financial papers. I can consolidate accounts so they're easier to track. Everything's online now." I hesitated, the file cabinet a fortress of my independence. But Daniel chimed in, "Let Brianna handle it, Mom. She's great at this. She studied finance." Reluctantly, I handed over the key, then my online banking passwords, trusting that a daughter-in-law helps her mother-in-law. At first, she was meticulous, printing statements, leaving them on the kitchen table with pink, sticky notes. Plumber, 85s. Car insurance, $140. I appreciated the neatness and told a neighbor, "I'm so lucky my daughter-in-law handles everything. I don't have to worry." But slowly the help became habit. Every new bill she'd say, "I'll handle it, Mom. You rest." Then she started retrieving my bank mail. "Mostly ads now. I'll screen it first. Saves time," she explained. I nodded, unconcerned, my trust blinding me. One morning in early 2023, I checked the mailbox earlier than usual. Empty. Brianna stood in the kitchen, holding a few envelopes, flinching when I entered. "I was going to bring these up for you," she said, forcing a smile. I smiled back, not suspecting a thing. Daniel grew busier, leaving early, returning late. Brianna ran the house. Meals, finances, repairs, taxes. I felt like a guest but told myself, the kids want to help. Nothing wrong with that. Late one night in November 2024, trying to confirm a routine checkup, I found my bank email password had changed. I asked Brianna the next morning, her smile unwavering. "I updated security. Don't worry, I saved everything." I nodded, though a knot tightened in my stomach. I pushed the doubt away, chalking it up to my aging mind. But the truth began to surface. One New Year's Eve, I wanted to donate to Robert's favorite charity, a local animal shelter. Brianna stopped me. "Mom, wait until the new year. We've got lots of expenses at month end." I stayed quiet, at first, feeling like I needed permission to use my own money. The shift was insidious. Every time I gave up a small bit of control, I handed Brianna a larger piece of power. Only when I sat in that bank and saw her holding papers with my name stamped on them, did I realize this had been a calculated setup, unfolding over years. The breaking point came in December 2024. I went to the bank alone to withdraw cash for a gift for my granddaughter. Nora, the teller, a kind woman I'd known for years, pulled up my account and paused. "Would you like to confirm the transfer from last Tuesday?" she asked. I frowned. "Last Tuesday, I didn't make any transfer." She turned the screen toward me. A receipt for $2,800 to an account under Hail Consulting LLC. I'd never heard of it. At the bottom was my signature, or rather a clumsy imitation. My skin prickled, my heart racing. I asked for a printed copy and took it home. That evening, I showed it to Brianna. "What is this? A company I've never heard of?" She glanced at it, her smile thin. "Probably a bank error. I'll call them tomorrow and get it fixed." Then she slipped the paper from my hand so quickly, I couldn't hold on. "Don't worry, Mom. Everything's safe." I studied her face, searching for embarrassment or remorse. Nothing. Her calm was almost confident. That night, I sat alone in the living room, the warm light falling on family photos on the wall. In one frame, I'm smiling between Daniel and Brianna, their hands on my shoulders. Back then, I thought I had everything. Now, looking again, all I saw was something hollow and unfamiliar. I started thinking about the old days. Me and Robert working late in our tiny downtown Portland office. My hands stained with ink as he made coffee. We built every dollar with sweat and trust. And now, in just a few months, a young woman was dismantling it all with polished charm and caring words. From that day, I paid closer attention. I quietly checked the file cabinet. Several folders were gone. Envelopes I'd tucked away in a drawer had vanished. The bank card Brianna still kept for me felt like a symbol of my lost autonomy. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman being pushed to the edge of her own life, not by shouting or force, but by sweetness, by words so gentle they numbed my defenses. That's when I began to understand. Not everyone who takes from you breaks in through the door. Some walk in with a smile and a warm "Mom." And only when it's too late do you see they didn't come to love you. They came to take your place in your own home. That morning, October 14th, 2025, the Oregon sky was a rare clear blue after days of rain, the first rays slipping through the curtains onto the polished wood floor. I made coffee as usual, turned on the local radio, and heard about a traffic jam on the Morrison Bridge. Everything was normal until that low restlessness pressed in my chest, like someone whispering, I had to go somewhere right now. I tried to brush it off, attributing it to the fatigue of age. The more I ignored it, the louder it became. A quiet, stubborn call. I set down my cup, grabbed my keys. Maybe I just need some air, I told myself. No makeup, no change of clothes. Just my grey cardigan and the soft-soled worn shoes I wear to the market. I didn't know where I was going, but my hand had already turned the key and started the old Subaru. Instinct took me to the Maple Street branch, the small bank where Robert and I had saved for more than 40 years. That place held so many memories. Opening our first account after the wedding, Robert's big smile when we finally paid off the house, the day I set a new passbook on the desk and said, "We did it." I parked beside the row of maples, just turning yellow. Sunlight flashed on the building's large glass, reflecting my shadow on the pavement. I stepped out, pulled my sweater tight, and felt a cool breeze slip through my hair. It was so quiet I could hear twigs snapping under my heels. The glass door opened. The air smelled faintly of coffee and freshly printed paper. Everything was just as I remembered. The light wood reception desk, the carefully vacuumed blue carpet, and the photo behind the counter. Serving our community since 1974. But within seconds, I knew something was wrong. At the far end by the branch manager's desk stood a woman, and I'd know that posture anywhere. Brianna. She wore an elegant cream suit, blonde hair pinned high, makeup flawless enough to erase any trace of fatigue. Beside her stood Mr. Jenkins, the branch manager, who sent flowers when Robert passed. He was bent over a thick file Brianna had set down while she spoke. In a voice that was soft, confident, completely composed, I stopped behind the stone column near the entrance, not ready to say hello. From there, I heard every word Brianna said. Mrs. Marjorie Hail is no longer able to manage her finances, she said softly but clearly. Her physician has confirmed progressive cognitive decline, so we just want to finalize legal guardianship. It's all in her best interest. It felt like someone yanked the rug from under me. My breath caught for a moment. I didn't know if I was awake or dreaming. Mrs. Marjorie Hail, my own name, echoed through the familiar lobby like they were talking about someone dead. Brianna went on, even offering a polite smile. Here's a copy of the medical record. Dr. Whitmore confirms mild dementia and recommends limiting independent financial activity. I watched her open the file and hand it to Mr. Jenkins. White paper, a round red stamp, a sloppy signature. Even from a distance, I could read the first line. Patient Marjorie Hail, 69 years old. I went numb. That was my name, my age, and they were twisting my life into a lie. In that moment, the pieces of the last few months snapped into place like a cruel puzzle. No mail at home, a new bank card, rescheduled appointments, and now this paper. The final piece I didn't want to see. A cold ache spread through me. I felt like I wasn't standing on the floor anymore. Like I was watching from above as my daughter-in-law, the one who called me Mom, calmly erased me from my own life. Brianna kept talking in that steady, administrative tone. We don't want the accounts to be abused. She's forgetful at times. This is just to protect my mother-in-law. Protect. She said it with pity, and I heard the sweet poison in her words. I looked around. A few customers sat waiting, flipping through magazines. No one paying attention, only me, the person truly on trial without being in the courtroom. I wanted to step out and shout that I was lucid, that this was fraud, that Dr. Whitmore didn't exist. But my feet felt nailed to the floor. My hand trembled. I gripped my pocket to steady it. I heard Mr. Jenkins's voice. I understand, Miss Brianna. We just need to verify a few details before we transfer authority. I closed my eyes for a second. A flash of Robert's gentle smile in our small kitchen years ago came to me. Never let anyone else hold the title to what you've built, he'd said. I opened my eyes, took a breath, and felt anger rise. Steady, no longer afraid. For the first time in my life, I knew what it meant to be betrayed by someone you trusted completely. I tightened my grip on my purse and walked toward the desk. My heels struck the tile in firm beats. A few people turned. Brianna kept talking, unaware I was almost there. I had only one thought. If she could write me out of my own story, then right here where she chose to bury me, she would face the truth. So, I took one more step, ready for the confrontation that I later realized changed everything. The morning of the trial brought a light rain, the kind that clings to the air with a metallic chill, mirroring the hardness in my mood. I walked into the Belmont County Courthouse with Pauline, her black umbrella covering half of me from the grey drizzle. The grounds were unusually crowded. A few local reporters standing outside with notepads and cameras, their interest piqued by whispers of an inheritance fraud case, where a mother was betrayed by her daughter-in-law. The story had spread over the past week, drawing curiosity from Portland's quiet corners. I didn't look at them. My old black shoes hit the stone steps in solid, certain taps, each step a declaration of my resolve. Pauline laid a hand on my shoulder, her voice low and firm. You made it here, Marjorie. Now let justice speak. I nodded, my hands clutching a thick file. Every piece of evidence, from recordings and videos to bank statements, numbered and neatly sealed. The result of sleepless nights under a warm lamp, writing down every small detail. When we entered the courtroom, Brianna was already there. She sat beside her attorney, Mr. Larson, a wiry man with a nervous tick, her hair perfectly styled, makeup meticulous, but her eyes couldn't hide the panic flickering beneath. Daniel sat behind her, not at her table, his face gaunt, as if he'd aged 10 years in the weeks since that bank morning. The judge, Eleanor Fitch, struck the gavel, the sound splitting the room into two. Truth on one side, lies on the other. Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Marjorie Hail, was systematically exploited and deceived by her own daughter-in-law, Brianna Hail. This individual forged medical records, falsified signatures, and used Mrs. Hale's bank accounts to attempt to seize her assets, actions that constitute clear violations of Oregon's elder protection laws and financial fraud statutes. We have irrefutable evidence to present, Pauline said, her voice sharp and commanding, cutting through the murmur of the courtroom. Your Honor, my client acted out of genuine concern for her mother-in-law's well-being. She believed Mrs. Hale was experiencing cognitive decline, which posed a financial risk. These actions were a misunderstanding, not an intent to steal. We request leniency given the context of familial care, Mr. Larson countered, adjusting his tie with a forced calm, his voice smooth but defensive. Ms. Pauline, please present your case, Judge Fitch ordered, leaning forward slightly, her gaze piercing as she addressed the room. If this was merely a misunderstanding, then let the court hear my opposing party's own voice. Exhibit A. Pauline nodded to the court clerk, who played the recording. Brianna's voice filled the room, clear and cold. You have to make her sign the trust again. Once she loses signing authority, this house will be ours. The words hung in the air, the silence that followed deafening. Brianna shifted in her seat, her hands tightening on the edge of the table. Pauline continued without pause. Exhibit B. The second recording played, Brianna's tone low and controlled. If you won't do it, I'll tell the lawyer she needs guardianship. Once the medical file goes in, she won't be able to fight. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath, the rain tapping against the windows, the only sound. Miss Hale, is that your voice on these recordings? Judge Fitch asked, her voice steady but authoritative. I don't remember saying that. Maybe someone edited it. It could be manipulated, Brianna stammered, her composure cracking as she clutched her purse. Your Honor, forensic audio analysis confirms a 100% voice match. There are no edits or alterations. The recordings are authentic, Pauline interjected swiftly, her tone unyielding. Mr. Larson, your response, Judge Fitch prompted, turning her attention to the defense. My client was under significant emotional stress, caring for an aging mother-in-law she believed was vulnerable. Her actions were an overreach, born of concern, not malice. We ask the court to consider this context. Larson rose again, his voice quickening as he tried to salvage the defense. With all due respect, Your Honor, I've managed my own finances for over 40 years with precision and care. I never authorized anyone to handle my accounts or sign on my behalf. The signature on those documents is a forgery, sloppy and unrecognizable as mine. Furthermore, Dr. Whitmore, cited as my physician, does not exist. I demand the truth be recognized. Marjorie stood, her voice steady and resonant, drawing all eyes to her. We submit bank verification reports confirming the forgery, a statement from the Oregon Medical Board stating no licensed Dr. Andrew Whitmore practices in this state, and a letter from my client's actual physician, Dr. Helen Carter, who attests there has been no diagnosis of cognitive impairment. The evidence is airtight. Pauline stepped forward, presenting a stack of documents with a flourish. Judge Fitch reviewed the documents methodically, her fingers tracing the pages, the red stamps and official seals glinting under the courtroom lights. After a long pause, she looked up, addressing Brianna directly. Miss Hale, the evidence before me indicates these actions are not only civil violations, but criminal offenses: forgery, financial abuse of an elder, and violation of property rights. Do you deny these charges? I only wanted to help. She's been forgetful sometimes, mixing up dates, misplacing papers. I was scared someone might take advantage of her. Brianna's voice broke, her hands trembling as she gripped the table. Forgetful. I uncovered this plot myself. Help doesn't forge signatures or fabricate medical records. This was a calculated attempt to strip me of my dignity and freedom. Marjorie cut in, her tone firm but controlled, her eyes locked on Brianna. Your Honor, I am Mrs. Marjorie Hale's son. I stayed silent for too long. I knew my wife, Brianna, was acting wrongly, but I didn't have the courage to stop her. I accept full responsibility for my cowardice and offer my deepest apologies to my mother. Daniel rose slowly, his voice trembling with emotion as he stepped forward. Bowing deeply, his head lowered, the weight of his words palpable. Mr. Hale, an apology is a commendable beginning, but the court must ensure justice is served. This is not a matter that can be resolved with remorse alone. Judge Fitch softened her expression slightly, her voice carrying a hint of compassion. She lifted the gavel, the wood gleaming as she prepared to strike. The room held its breath. Based on the evidence presented, the court orders that all of Mrs. Marjorie Hale's assets and accounts be fully restored to her control. All related financial transactions are to be frozen and subjected to a thorough investigation. The defendant, Brianna Hale, is hereby charged with forgery and financial abuse of an elder. Court is adjourned. She struck the gavel 3 times, each blow echoing through the room like a final judgment. Marjorie closed her eyes for a moment, a wave of relief washing over her, the tension in her shoulders easing. The courtroom buzzed as people rose. Reporters scribbling notes. 2 weeks after the trial, on a late afternoon in early November, I heard a gentle knock at the door. When I opened it, Daniel stood there, thinner than I remembered. His eyes hollow, his shirt wrinkled as if he'd walked out of a storm that wouldn't end. He was quiet for a few seconds, his breath visible in the cool air, then spoke softly. "Mom, can I come in?" I nodded and stepped aside, letting him into the small lakeside house I'd just moved into. It was peaceful here, a 10-minute drive from town, but far enough to breathe without the past chasing me. The living room smelled of fresh paint and pine, the windows framing a view of the lake, shimmering under a thin veil of fog. Daniel sat on the edge of the sofa, his hands locked together, unsure where to begin. After a long while, he took a shaky breath, his voice breaking but honest. "Mom, I know it's over, but I can't live with myself if I don't say this. I was manipulated. Brianna knew how to make me feel guilty, to make me believe that if I didn't take her side, I was a bad husband, a bad father. I didn't see that I was losing you piece by piece." I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised with bedtime stories and scraped knees, and I wasn't angry anymore. Just a soft sadness settled over me, like wind across the water. I spoke quietly, slow as breathing. "No one controls a person with a conscience, Daniel. They only use your silence, and you let silence speak for you for too long." He bowed his head, his knuckles whitening as he gripped his hands. "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. I just hope you'll let me be your son again." I stood, walked to him, and laid a hand on his shoulder, feeling the tension beneath his jacket. "You've always been my son. Sometimes we have to walk through loss to see who's truly still there." His eyes filled with tears as he nodded, and when he left, I watched until his car disappeared behind the trees along the shore. Relief spread through me, not because I'd forgiven, but because I no longer carried resentment. I'd moved to this house, our old getaway from the 1980s, a place Robert and I bought for quiet weekends. Now it's truly home. Sophie, my granddaughter, visits every weekend, a ray of light in my new life. She jumps from Daniel's car, her honey-colored hair catching the sunlight, and shouts, "Grandma, my hero!" I laugh, opening my arms as she runs into them, the scent of apple shampoo in her hair making my throat catch. We sit on the porch, the lake glinting in the distance, and she bites into a slice of my fresh apple pie, crumbs dusting her chin. "Why aren't you mad at Dad anymore? He looks so sad," she asks, her clear eyes searching mine. I smooth her hair, smiling gently. "Anger only wears you out, sweetheart. Some people aren't bad. They're weak, and sometimes the best thing we can do is refuse to be weak with them." She thinks for a moment, her brow furrowing, then looks up. "Grandma, I'm scared that when I grow up, people won't believe me like they didn't believe you." I look into her eyes and see myself years ago, naive, wanting to be understood, wanting to be trusted. I squeeze her hand, my voice slow but certain. "You don't need everyone to believe you, Sophie. You need to believe yourself, and never let anyone speak for you. Once you let them decide who you are, you lose your own voice." She nods, her eyes bright with understanding, and rests her head on my shoulder, whispering, "I want to be strong like you." I smile, deep and warm. "No, sweetheart, I'm not stronger than anyone else. I just learned that silence can be a way to fight when it walks with the truth." A soft breeze stirs, carrying a hint of lavender from the garden, and I look out at the lake, where the sunset lays like a thin sheet of silk. Peace settles in my chest, a quiet victory. A year after the trial, I stood on a small stage in Belmont's downtown hall, beneath a new plaque gleaming with the words, "Hail Foundation for Elder Justice." It's the non-profit I founded with the assets I reclaimed, with one purpose: to support older women who've suffered financial abuse. or been stripped of control by their own families. The hall was filled with silver-haired women like me, their faces etched with understanding. Some nodded, some quietly wiped tears. I knew many had been called useless, too old to be heard. I wanted them to know none of us are truly weak. I lifted the microphone, my voice low and steady, each word etched into the air. People think age is a sign of weakness. In truth, we're just watching in silence. When you've lived long enough, you learn when to keep quiet and when to speak. Today, we speak for those who've been silenced. Applause rolled through the hall like a warm wave, and I smiled, turning to my side, where Sophie stood. She wore a simple white dress, her eyes bright, her small hand gripping mine. I felt the warmth in that palm. The passing of a torch to a new generation, clearer and stronger. Sophie looked up and whispered, "Grandma, you're my hero." I squeezed her hand and answered softly, but sure. "No, sweetheart. Real heroes don't let others define them. And you'll be one of them." Late light poured through the tall windows, reflecting off the bronze plaque. For a moment, I could almost see Robert smiling somewhere, proud that I hadn't let fear decide the rest of my life. I reclaimed my voice, my life. This little house by the lake, once a weekend escape, is now my sanctuary. Happiness isn't being loved forever. It's knowing when to leave so you can keep yourself. I sit at my desk each night, writing under the glow of a lamp, the words flowing like a river freed from ice. Tonight I pen, happiness isn't being loved forever. It's knowing when to leave so you can keep yourself. Then I set down the pen and listened to the crickets and the faint slap of water on the shore. I smile, close my eyes, and feel the night breeze in my silver hair. My life, which once felt withered, is blooming again, quietly, steadily, and brightly in its own way. Sometimes I think of Brianna, not to resent her, but to remind myself that greed and deceit always carry a price. As for me, I finally paid off the debt of blind trust, and I know that when the sun rises, I'll start another day, no longer afraid of losing anyone, and never letting anyone speak for me again. After the ceremony, I sat as the hall emptied. Outside, the sun was slipping behind the river, a pale band of orange across the horizon. I sipped tea, listened to the wind, and felt my heart light as paper. I had walked through betrayal, loss, and justice, and now there was only peace. I watched Sophie helping staff clean up and realized something simple. I hadn't just reclaimed assets. I'd reclaimed a voice, my own. And for women like me, if you're still listening, thank you for walking with me to the end. I believe that wherever you are, big city or small town, you understand that justice and dignity don't have an expiration date. Tell me where you're watching from, so I'll know how far this story has traveled. And if, like me, you believe that women who stand up at any age deserve to be heard, please leave a comment, or subscribe so we can keep telling stories of courage, freedom, and stubborn love. I'm Marjorie Hail, and here's the last lesson I want to leave. Don't let anyone speak for you, because your voice is the greatest power no one can take.